express themselves. So yeah.
Thank you so much, the young people. And this brings to mind Ella Baker's words, right? It's the young people for the world.
I was gonna say, I think my thoughts kind of build on exactly where Amari was talking about. Is like, I think a lot about the role that elders play in setting some of the tones of the movement that we're bringing young people into. As someone who is constantly sort of working with young people who are very new to this stuff and just sort of starting to test the water a little bit, I worry sometimes if the environment I'm bringing them into is a healthy one, is a safe one, right? And the elders who I have been able to trust and been able to really work the best with are the ones who are able to hold that space and say, we will make this space safe for you. We will listen to you. We will do all these adult ally, like co-conspirator role things that make that space safe for young people to join in. And there was a moment, where I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep bringing young people into this movement because I wasn't sure if it was safe for them. And that's really scary to say, like, if no young people keep coming, we're in trouble. So we need to be building a movement that's safe for young people to be joining. And that's something that only those of us who are in it already can do.
Thank you so much, Julia. You have pointed out another dimension and responsibility, accountability we have when bringing the young people, however that's defined. Nazifa, would you want to follow or add something to Julia's?
Yeah, I was. One of the main things I wanted to point out was a lot of the youth or my peers and stuff, they don't join out to organizing things because one of the main things is fear, and because of like things not going their way, which usually it will not, and it's scary to them. Especially, it's scary to me. So it's just like not being able to go through with the things you want to do and just facing backlash from like adults, because who thinks, oh, they're a child, they don't know what's going on, or from even like their classmates who would be like, oh, they're doing too much, they need to settle down. It's hard to balance both of those things. So it's like important to be dedicated to the things you're trying to do and to the movement that you're doing. And you can't really let other people outside external factors kind of stop you from the main view. And that happens a lot, especially with teenagers, and that we get easily influenced. So it's important we don't let our mind just shift away from the things we're actually truly passionate about.
I'll jump in, Lori. I think a real challenge has been since the pandemic. A lot of our work is, face-to-face, relationships. So that was broken, for like the last year and a half. And that has been really hard for our intergenerational work. We finally met together after almost a year and a half. So that has really, we have some work to do there, because in handing off to the younger generation, they need to be there. We all need to be together, helping each other. And we weren't able to do that. So I believe, that has set us back, and it became like the trust. I mean, you build trust by communicating, being together, working together. So, and that wasn't there for the last year and a half. So that's what we're dealing with right now. And so that's it.
Lori, you have just added a very important piece into this conversation, the intergenerational, cross-generational organizing during the pandemic, right? And we definitely need to hear from Adrian, Dr. Avazian, who has been in just about every single movement, you know, in her very, very young and short life so far, young and life. Okay, Dr. Avazian.
And please call me Andrea, please. My very young and short life is now 70 years. So there is, there's a long life and lots of gray hair. When you ask the question, how we would, what is the state of the peace and social justice movement now? It took me back to our years at PDF in the 80s. And when many people on this screen were involved in PDF in the 80s, we were very focused on the peace movement as an anti-war and stop nuclear weapons movement, the freeze movement. And it was very specific in those years. And we did a lot of anti-war peace movement activism and freeze activism, stopping nuclear war. What I'm seeing now in our cross-generational dialogue and organizing is that young people are so much more able to connect movements so that climate change and stopping nuclear war and Black Lives Matter and immigration issues and LGBTQ issues and trans rights and the Me Too movement, so many more movements are now seen as connected. And the young people are teaching us movement elders how to see the connections between movements. So our work is not just cross-generational, it's cross-movement. And I feel like the networks are much more, much deeper, run much deeper. And that when Amari was saying that young people need to learn from us movement elders and elders need to learn from young activists, I think elders like me are learning from young activists how to keep raising the interconnection of issues. And I think that that's very powerful right now, that the silos are being broken down and the kind of one issue campaigns that we had of years past are a thing of the past, and the intersection and interconnection of our movements and our work is really powerful. And I'm learning that from young people.
That is definitely a quotable, unlearning that from the young people. That's powerful. And I definitely want to underscore some of your words, Andrea. It is more than cross-generational. It is the seasoned, the experienced learning from the young ones in the movement. And it is also cross movement. And to that, you know, to the point of yours, I would say movements are increasingly and dazzlingly beautifully intersectional. So we have heard from everyone so far on the panel. And given the fact that Dr. Mildred McLean is not able to get into this room, we know that she was here earlier. I would love to have our president of the board, Teresa Juarez, to say something, because very much like Andrea, very much like Lori, she definitely has been in many movements, have seen a lot, and also nurturing, working with young folks. So may we have the honor of Teresa say a few words?
Yes, first I want to welcome everybody and thank you so much for being on the panel today. I think this is one of the most important issues that we are facing in our movements across not only this country, but the world as a whole. I always feel that we all got things to learn from each other. It's important for us to learn to listen, as many as our elders would always tell us, you know, it's important to listen. It doesn't mean that you what you're saying is right or it's wrong. It's how we move forward within what we are hearing. So I think I agree with many of the young people right now in terms of fear. I think fear is one of the things that, you know, more, it's part of who we are. What you fear is you fear the unknown. And I think that many times when we are in these rooms, when we feel that we need to say something, and I've seen many young people hold back from expressing what they really feel, feeling that they will be quiet down or, you know, told not to speak. But I think that in this generation, that has changed. I think what we're seeing now is that whole cross-cultural, cross-generational, cross issues, that what is happening now is that people are seeing where we connect. That disconnect that used to exist before, those barriers are breaking down. And so now young people can sit in a room as well as elders can sit in those rooms and be able to express what their feelings are or what they're seeing happening in the world from their own eyes and their own involvement. And I think that that's one of the most important things, bringing the voices of a cross-generational movement is what's needed in this country. It's to break down those barriers and those isolations, very much of what Lori has spoken to. You know, where do we come to a point where we now can be in the same room? Technology moves us away from that. And so we need to learn how to use the technology that we have, which young people are incredible, incredible at. I mean, you know, when you get on the computer and you see that they're organizing all of these movements all over the country, you know, and that wasn't, we didn't have that access before. So it is in the best interest of both our young people and our elders to come together to figure out how we move this movement forward for the benefit of all of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Who's you know, a movement leader and an Apache and Chicana healer as well. I mean, among many other titles. There is a question in the John Preston just put the question in the chat. So how does all of this, so to anyone in the everyone in the panel, how does all of this affect electoral politics?
This is Lori. I want to say that, you know, when Peace Development Fund started with, you know, peace and where it is now, what has happened in all those years, I can say, living in Southwest Colorado, you know, we have a lot of patriot people, you know, what do you call them? Anyway, so in all that work that you all have done, you know, all the educating has gone to the electoral politics, where it's opened up the door of educating each other at the community level. When we have it, there's Cortez, Colorado is like a white supremacist, you know, type of area. And so in all that, 2 years ago, we had a Navajo woman start Black Lives Matter there. And so, and it was really the younger people. And it was like, okay, we need some elders here type of thing. So that started, so that education, and then in that process, you learn who not to vote for type of thing. So I think, I think the foundation is going on where like now we have, I don't know if you've seen the book, The Reckoning by Mary Trump, what she talks about. That is an incredible book that she, just well written, you know, talking about, you know, really giving the history of, you know, why we shouldn't even be honoring these, you know, white Civil War folks and what they have done, that kind of stuff. And laying in there, educating, you know, like talking about how the veterans, you know, bill, you know, for education, everything's been slanted. Everything's been slanted. And the reason why, you know, people of color, you know, or in the rut that they're in, that's all been engineered, you know, by our elected officials, you know, in Congress. So that kind of stuff. So I think in that way, we educate ourselves more. And then even that by Mary Trump, Donald Trump's sister, writing something like this, that was unheard of. And also we have another one, Fiona Hill, you know, her book about There Is Nothing Here for You. That was also another great book. She talks about how she came up from poverty. And the point that she made was that in America, this racism is what really keeps people down. So very interesting stuff. And so to me, that's all the work, that all the organizing that has been done by people for the last 3-4 decades, you know. So it's coming through. We want it to be faster, but you know, it's always like, you know, we're always trying to out-organize all these, you know, dams that are being put before us. So I just want to say thank you to all of you for all your work.
What awesome, Lori, and what an apt analogy, the dam. I mean, actually, it is actually virtual, also a physical dam in many parts of the country and the world as well, particularly indigenous land. Would anyone wondering, and others would like to say a few words regarding organizing and electoral politics?
If it's okay if I just jump in here, it's Amari. I think going back to the cross-generational organizing, I think a lot of today, a lot of politicians are looking towards like the younger people and the younger generations when before running campaigns, and also how to make that systemic change, like in our respective area and like worldwide. They're looking for those young voices to have them either on their campaign or reaching out to young people to see what the young people want, the real change the young people want to see like in their communities and in their areas. And I think this is a place where young people can really get involved and really make systemic change by, you know, going out and reaching to those politicians, because we're the people they want to hear from. Like, we're eventually going to be their constituents, and we're the people who are going to affect whether or not they're going to have a job in the next few weeks.
Right on, Amari. Absolutely. How about?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the connections that we can make between youth organizing and electoral work, I mean, none of the young people in DAM can vote, right? So first off, young people are disenfranchised in this country and do not have the right to vote. And I think that's important to think about when we think about how it connects to electoral work, because how do you impact that system when the right to vote has been taken away from you or denied to you? And so we can learn a lot from past histories of disenfranchised people and how they advocated for themselves throughout the history of this country. And I think one of the other things to really hold close to us is that young people and people who are thinking outside of the lines of this current society in any way. A lot of the young people in this generation are LGBTQ. A lot of the young people in this generation are working class, are youth of color. They are thinking outside of the bounds of what the adults in their lives have been confined to. And so they allow us to expand the realm of what is possible to demand. And so when we think about electoral politics, a lot of the times it's A or B, red or blue. And young people challenge us to think about what else we could demand. And I think that's really one of their powers, their superpowers, right? Is to say, that's not acceptable. I don't want A or B. I don't want blue or red. This is what I want. And so embracing that power and embracing that superpower is really important to me.
It's beautiful words. I want to say that it's at the same time inviting us to imagine the impossible, right? You know, and what another world may look like beyond red and blue, blue and red. Yes. Nazifa, Anika, we are coming to the last 5-6 minutes or so, but there's plenty of room for everyone to say something regarding the question that is actually, you know, has a lot of practical implications, you know, what we do in this world. If I may, I'll throw in another piece here. So to actually invite you to say a little bit more about the PDF and its role in the social justice movement. So how has PDF supported your organization / organizing? And where do you see PDF's role in movements? So here's obviously Lori, Andrea, and Teresa, who have been sort of on the side of the organizing, but I'm sure that you have seen how it works. But particularly inviting from our youth organizers to hear from them, from their side, and maybe also tell us how we can do better.
Let me just jump in real quick, and I want to pass it off to Amari. But in terms of how PDF has supported us, I mean, at the Youth Activism Project, we really believe in paying organizers when we can. And so, and I hear another question here, some stories behind some of what we're talking about. So maybe I'll pass it off to Amari and talk about, you know, how the funding enabled you guys, for example, to get rid of SROs. So if you can tell a story about that.
Great.
Yeah, so I kind of got involved in steps like March last year with the Black Lives Matter movement, and I came in knowing absolutely nothing about activism. I just knew that I wanted to make change in my community with this new movement going essentially global around the world. And coming in, I didn't really have the skill set to know how to go into a meeting with council members and what questions I should be asking, or how to write an email, or even how to write press releases. I was just so lost and confused. And with the help of the Youth Activism Project, I was able to go to trainings and build up those skills. So when I did eventually go into meetings again with council members, I felt a lot more confident to ask those tough questions that we needed to ask in order to see change happen in our community. And that would not have been possible if I didn't have the skill set before. One of the most important things I learned, I remember when talking to council members, is really pushing for, and what change are we going to see, or going back and asking them, and what are we going to do moving forward? Not just this is my idea and that's having a dialogue, but what are they going to do to help support us, and so we can see this change. what are we going to do after this meeting, so that it's not just here, but we're actually seeing change after these meetings. And that was such an important skill that I still use even outside of activism when I'm in meetings. And honestly, like that just would not have been possible without these activism project and that funding to get those trainings. And I know I and a lot of my other members from STEPS could definitely say the same.
Can you talk a little bit more about that funding piece and what it feels like to be a young activist that's paid to do this work, and how that might have impacted your leadership and the work that you did?
Yeah, so obviously I'm a senior in high school, and that comes with college apps, and they're not cheap. And being able to get paid also gives me a chance to be more involved in activism, because a lot of the times, unfortunately, the students who are most affected by the issues that are happening today also have to work 2 or 3 jobs to support their family. So myself and my leaders having that funding and getting paid to also do the work that we love to do and make change in our communities gives us that chance to really, really go deep into the work and really be making change, but also not worrying about that factor of like trying to help support our families and other expenses that we have.
And that's all thanks to PDF. You guys have enabled this amazing activism. So thank you, you guys.
Oh my goodness, that gets me a bit emotional. I think that's why we have to keep on working hard, raising funds, and to do more work cross-generationally, right? Would either Julia or Nazifa like to offer a few thoughts on, in what ways PDFs, has aided in your organization?
I spoke recently, so Nazifa, you want to go first? Do you have something?
I honestly just know about like the grants and stuff, but I haven't really known about specific projects. I think you should go first.
Okay, I'll go first. Yeah, so 2 things. Building what Amari said very much resonates for DAM. Like, we have a similar kind of value. All of our board members get paid, and some of that funding comes from PDF. And something that I've talked a lot about with PDF staff and also with DAM members and other people is the flexibility of PDF funding. A lot of youth organizing funding is very project based. It's like, okay, you're going to put on this conference, or you're going to put on this internship, and that's what this money is for. And so you can't swivel. And so when COVID hit, most youth programs in Detroit shut down. They were not able to operate anymore because they were funded to do a very specific thing, usually inside of the schools, and they could no longer do that thing. And so they just stopped operating. And what was just so powerful for DAM was we had just received a PDF grant. And so we didn't have to shut down. We just, in some ways, kept on trucking, and we just shifted our entire plan for that year to a totally different project. And we wouldn't have been able to do that without the flexibility that PDF gives us in their grant program, to just sort of do what we want to do and what the young people want to do. There's very little grants available in Michigan, in the Midwest, that do that kind of flexible funding. And then the other thing I really want to lift up is that youth organizers are viciously attacked by their schools. And that's something that all DAM members have experienced when they have tried to activate and organize and advocate for themselves and their peers. And so one of the things that happens is they lose some of their honors, right? So if you're a really high performing student and you suddenly get involved in activism, one of the ways that the school will respond is, I've had students removed from National Honor Society, taken out of city council or student council, told that they can no longer have certain special privileges and special clubs and things like that. And so funding in positions like our board of directors allow us to give them some honors back, right? And to say, even if you're no longer a straight A student and president of the student council, you're on the DAM board of directors. You are an organizer. You are this, and that gives, I think, maybe a little bit of a step up to say, you didn't give up everything for this. You don't need to feel like you are nobody just because your school says that you're nobody. When you're with us, you're very much somebody, and the funding really helps us to put some resources behind those words. But Nazifa, do you want to add anything to that? I don't know how that comes off to you.
Yeah, I think because of like where we are now, where we live, like the capitalist society, there's a lot to do with, you need a lot of things to do. You need the resources to do things you want to do. And usually those resources come with money. And kind of like Julia brought up the point with like school clubs or just like different things like NHS and stuff, you have to pay to be in those things. And ultimately you kind of just, I don't know, I'm doing I'm doing NHS in my school too. And I've been like, they have like their membership dues and everything. And honestly, I don't feel like I'm doing as much as I can be at that club as I can at DAM in comparison to like, there's no fees and stuff. And it's just overall, I feel like I'm giving more back through DAM than I am with NHS. And NHS is just revolving around volunteering. But still, I feel like there's so much they're lacking towards that. And I feel like the money they get from us isn't used in the best way. And it's kind of just, and their board is kind of like a unanimous thing. So whatever the board decides, that's what's going to happen. And that's one of the main differences between, I think like that should be a difference between these programs, is that it shouldn't just always rely on the board. Like, yes, we look to these because they are the leaders and stuff, but you also need to look at the other members and get some other opinions and just involve them in it too, because they are still part of that program. They're not just here to just follow your directions, because they're here to make change as well. So I think a lot with like grants and resources, those come towards with money. And it's just having access to those things is such a hard thing. So when you do have access to them and you kind of get to change your project and evolve with the movements you're trying to do. So.
Okay, thank you so much, Nazifa, Julia, Anika, Amari, and Lori, Andrea. I definitely want to say that the last 10 minutes was really fire. I feel we are heartened, we are encouraged, and we're also challenged. So here's to the next 4 decades of PDF work with all our youth. So I'm going to pass this, concluding this panel discussion, and thank you all. We probably should extend this for another discussion another time. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. And good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. And thank you to our panelists for that great conversation. In just a few minutes, we're going to be premiering for the first time PDF's 40th anniversary short film, Reflections on Peace and Justice Organizing. We're really excited to share that with you all. But before I do that, I want to just take a couple of minutes to introduce and give a very warm welcome to our filmmaker, Jamal Maneed, who's a professional filmmaker based in Boston and was connected to PDF actually from another grassroots organization, Community Change. And just for me personally, working with Jamal over the last 10 months and counting, it's been just an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to you all having the opportunity to see his incredibly talented work and also to hear this story of Peace Development Fund. So I'll turn it over to you, Jamal. And I'd love maybe before you give us the final countdown, if you could just share any reflections or anything that stood out to you about the process behind this film. And we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for having me, and what an absolute pleasure and honor it's been to work with PDF since this December, almost an entire year, as you said at this point, Brennan. Interfacing with Brennan, interfacing with Paul, I think has genuinely been some of the highlights of these past several months for me. And one of the kind of central tasks of this film was kind of posed to me initially as a question by Brennan in one of our first meetings, which is, there's 40 years of history here. How can we summarize this, right? Like that feels like a David and Goliath level task. That feels impossible. And, something that I really wanted to begin to do as I worked on this film was start with informational interviews with folks, really sit down with the people that have been a part of this organization over the last 40 years. And I learned truly a lot of really incredible things, and started to pick out these different threads that were always coming back about PDF's honesty, about PDF's the fact that PDF is more than a grant maker, that, you know, it's not just about money. Money, of course, is super important, but it's really about fostering those relationships, building capacity, you know, starting to get people excited and energized about this work. And that's something that truly was infectious for me, and really drew me to do this work for you all day in and day out, sleeplessly many nights in the editing bay. I'm sure similar to you all, something that I'm really worried about is, you know, just where our nation is headed. There's a lot of very powerful corporate interests. There's a lot of very powerful, you know, history and discriminatory practices that have gone on for quite some time. And so when I reflect on my experience working with PDF, and also reflecting on, you know, the stories that I've heard, and seeing as well, you know, the grantees that are here, such as DAM, it's really important that this work is being done, right? You guys are the salt of the earth, right? You keep kind of the madness at bay to some degree, right? Without folks like you, I think things would be far worse than they are, frankly. And, you know, I think I'll conclude this brief introduction by saying that this film is really a love letter to PDF and to the work that's done. And, you know, again, I truly cannot be thankful enough to have been a part of this process, and to help you all tell your story in hopefully as compelling fashion as possible. So without further ado.
If someone is screaming in my face and I punch them and knock them unconscious, they're not screaming at me anymore. Did I just create peace by punching this person in the face? As absurd as that example is, this is how our society tries to create peace. Mass incarceration, if we just lock up all the criminals, then we'll have peace. If all the Black Lives Matter protesters would just shut up, then we'll have peace. But in reality, in a world where violence has become so normalized, peace is a messy process because it requires justice, and justice is loud.
So the Peace Development Fund started as a consequence of the nuclear weapons freeze campaign. We called it the Nuclear Weapons Moratorium. And we were all focused at that time in the early days on issues of peace and disarmament, particularly nuclear disarmament. And at the same time, we realized there was almost no funding available for grassroots groups. And it was only grassroots groups that were going to bring about change in people's attitude. So a few of us decided that we would start a fund that would fund exclusively grassroots work.
All 5 programs are the Sustainability Project, the Community Organizing Grants Docket, the Donor Advised Funds, Fiscal Sponsorship Program, and the Special Initiatives. We understand and believe that folks in the community know what they need. So our job is to get them resources. We have folks in our systems by design who are part of those movements. That gives it strength and capacity and credibility and respect and trust. So when we're sitting down across the table from somebody in the community who's just meeting us for the first time, we're not bringing BS, we're bringing real experience. And that's that authentic relationship on which we base our grant making. Our job is to get resources and try to get it to you. And your job is to do what you need to do in your communities, not us to tell you that.
BASE was the Building Action for Sustainable Environments. And it brought together 15, 16 communities that were all living near some chain of the nuclear cycle. For the first time that I've ever known, bringing all of the pieces of that chain together, all of the links of that chain together, so we can see the entire arc of the nuclear industry. And this isn't just unique to BASE. There's such a need for grassroots organizations to come and meet each other and to do collective visioning and collective strategizing, but that no one has the time to organize these big types of gatherings. In a lot of the initiatives that we put on, PDF took on that role where we would pull together groups of 40, 50 different activist organizations and give them 3 or 4 days. And again, it wasn't like an agenda that we planned. We kind of handed it over to them and saying, we'll fund this gathering, we'll do all of the logistics, we'll buy all the plane tickets, and you all figure out what you need to talk about.
All these people were coming together and bringing a bunch of organizers into a room that were willing and committed to figuring out how are we able to support each other? How are we able to address our cultural differences? Having people on the board was a very important issue. To have the representation that we needed to understand what was happening in the indigenous world and the issues that we needed to address from a grassroots perspective, to ensure that we were being able to fund the communities at the level that we were.
And it was oftentimes a messy process, right? Because it is such a new thing. It wasn't always perfect. It wasn't always clean. We had arguments. But I think the fact that we had arguments with our grantees says a lot, right? Like, how many foundations have the type of relationships where they can have real conflict with their grantees and get through it and never question that the funding would be cut because we were having this conflict? There was already the relationship and the trust that allowed us to go to that depth, that allowed the grantees to trust that, oh, PDF is really serious when they say that we're gonna try this thing called co-creation. We're gonna try to actually co-create this initiative with the grantees, with PDF just being one of the people that had a seat at the table.
And how could we build a movement that would allow us to see the movement as a whole rather than individual movements going on in individual communities? How do we build a movement that is sustainable? What is it going to look like when you have your son? What are the next 7 generations going to look like?
The big broad base of small donors is the bread and butter of this whole movement. We get up $200 a year from, a couple of different orders of nuns around the country. We've never met them. They found us. They send us $200 a year. But that's the fuel, but it's also the community. I know when I contribute this money, I'm affecting work in New Orleans, and I'm affecting work on the, transit riders in Seattle.
It's not about you when you're in philanthropy, and the world is treating you as if it is about you. It is all about them and your ability to see what's happening, what's authentic, and where the money can be the catalyst. Those are skills, and PDF has those skills.
That is why Peace Development Fund is always focused on supporting the organizations that are loud, noisy, makes people uncomfortable, and challenges the normalization of violence. In order for us to get to justice, we need to support grassroots organizers who are not scared to bring conflict to the surface, to bring tension to the surface, and raise a ruckus, but all in the name of creating real peace. PDF is not an endowed foundation. We're not sitting on a huge piece of money, spending it down over these 40 years. The PDF has had to raise every cent that we've given away. And the fact that we've been able to do that for 40 years and people are still supporting the organization says a lot about its ability to adapt.
Right now, we're getting ready to celebrate 40 years. What an honor. What a privilege. I got friends in prison, and I got friends that have been killed for doing this work. I may be a straight up white guy, but I live in that world. I found my way into that world. And in that world, your struggle's my struggle. So we're in it together, and I'm going to do what I can to help you get what you need to do that.
Oh my goodness. OMG, Jamel, when you said that this is your love letter to PDF, you're not kidding. It was very emotional to me as a fairly young, as someone who joined PDF officially fairly recently. This is very, very emotional. We would love to hear from you, the panelists, and as well as everyone in this room, your reflections, your responses to this film. Speaking of PDF's past, present, and future. So would anyone would like to, some of you, thank you so much that I'm already seeing comments that you put in the chat. We really appreciate that.
I'd love to jump in. Would that be okay? I'd love to jump in. So I was with PDF in the 1980s, and Jamal, that is a beautiful film, and it so captures the work of the early PDF and the PDF that has gone on and made such an impact nationwide. I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, I'm seeing the chat just saying over and over again how inspiring and beautiful that is. And I want to really give just a moment of great tribute to the early organizers. Meg is here, and Bob Mazer, and the early board and the early organizers, because early on PDF understood that just what was said in the film and what Paul has said, that money and giving grants was going to be a part of how we strengthen grassroots movements for change. But the other part is that movement building is relationship building, and PDF invested in relationship building early on. When we had the Exchange Project, I went with Kim Klein, who Ray has been lifting up and so fond of, and Randy Keeler and Ken Jones and others, to our grantees in different cities around the country. So we would plop ourselves in Charlotte, North Carolina, and 12 groups, 12 grantees, 12 grassroots groups from all around Carolina would come to this retreat center and talk to each other and build relationships, so that they would, after the weekend workshops, they would go to each other's events, help each other, support one another. PDF understood that movement building is relationship building. It is not just the giving away of money. It is supporting the grassroots. It's just like Cesar Chavez said when he was asked, what is good organizing? He said, well, first you talk to one person, and then you talk to another person, and then you talk to another person, and then you talk to another person. And PDF knew that early on. And we built networks and strengths and support and trust in regions and nationally. And I just think it's amazing that one film could capture so much of the history and the inspiration and the commitment. And that was just really moving. And I'm with Tricia that I got very emotional watching it. So bless you, thank you. And ever onward, PDF, the world needs you.
If I could add to that, this is Meg. Thank you, Andrea. It really is about relationships, and the film is wonderful, Jamal, and it was a treat to meet you and spend that time together. It's a brilliant film. One of the things that PDF has always been an important role for PDF is understanding the importance of community-based organizing. And that's how change happens. You can have big national movements and big important people making speeches about how important blah, blah, blah is. But when it has to come to your life and to your community, that you can become engaged and active, that you can start to believe that change is possible. It's really important. And PDF was among the very first funders to understand the importance of funding at the grassroots level, regardless of the issue. The issues changed, but the strategy didn't change that much. And PDF very much influenced, was part of a whole wave of other public foundations like the Funding Exchange Networks, for example, that we were very much a part of beginning this understanding of how important reaching people where they are. And it was almost at that time, no funding available for people at the community level, partly because foundations couldn't figure it out. And we helped develop ways of getting money to grassroots groups that people could figure out. So thanks for the great film. And thanks for doing this event, Paul and everybody. And I just want to say, I really miss seeing this Hubert and Connie and Ken and who have been with us and aren't.
Jorge.
Oh, big important. Yeah. That probably others, but Connie would have loved this, and Hubert and Jorge and Ken and others. And we all can't believe how old we all got. Jeez.
And you're still looking young.
No, you don't have to say that, but that's nice of you to say. But we're still doing stuff. Andrea and I, we're still rocking it.
Am I correct in seeing Terrence Tierney hand raised? Terrence? I'm not sure that hand sign, what it means. Anyone else? What actually stands out to you in the film? Particular moments that speak to your particular work? Yes, Nazifa?
Yeah, so I want to talk about one of the main things that kind of stood out to me during the short film was when they were talking about philanthropy, and usually the attention goes towards the philanthropist rather than what the philanthropist is donating to. And I think that's such a huge thing, especially with huge amount of donations or just like a lot of media articles. The attention kind of shifts from the actual cause or the movement in comparison to the person who's donating. And I think that's such an important thing, because we should be focusing on the movement and the cause and just elaborating more on that rather than who's donating it, why they're donating it. Like, I think it kind of shifts the perspective, and I think it's more important that we focus on elaborating on the movements, the causes, and how we could help, instead of just like shifting it towards one specific person who's doing it for their own intentions.
And I think the film has also made it very clear for all viewers with any level of understanding of PDF, the arc, this really long arc of a PDF's commitment to social justice. Meg mentioned that we may have moved on to different issues. I actually want to say that serving on this board, having gone through a few iterations of grassroots organizing grants, I just don't know what issues we have not really taken in. At times it really feels like that we're feeling the pulse of the grassroots organizing when we look at the grant proposals.
In the end, I don't think it's about issues. It's more about empowering people to take action around the things that are important in their community.
Yes.
Sorry to speak twice. And sometimes I'm going to tell you, I'll write a funny story about that picture with Yoko Ono. It's hilarious.
Okay. And yes, I see a hand from Teresa's screen, Daniel Schreck. Also,
yeah, I just wanted to echo what Meg was saying. Hey, Meg, it's Danny Schreck from Abelard Foundation. Hi. As well. But no, Meg was talking about the foundations that would, fund at the grassroots level. We used to call those the dirty dozen, right? So it was the Funding Exchange, Tides, PDF. I mean, I guess Abelard would be considered to be in there. Yep. Need More. There was a few of them in there that were considered to be ones that would do community organizing, grant making. So I'm just kind of saying that for the younger folks, because part of what I really liked about what one of you guys said was the youth is of course I came strong out of that canon, which is the way the world should be. We were marching in the streets on Moratorium Day in 1969 in San Francisco for 500,000 strong against the Vietnam War. So it's kind of ironic that I find myself in PDF, kind of at the other end. I got on maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So part of what I just wanted to say to the younger people too, to kind of circle back to that, was just hopefully as so-called semi-elders in development, we can at least have some historical perspective to lay on the table that go, okay, well, we did this or we did that. I did hear, Paul's heard this before, but I thought I'd throw it in there again. I had the opportunity to hang out at a talk that John Trudell gave in Santa Cruz at an outfit called Barrios Unidos. And one of the things he said is, when we were coming up in the movement as, young warriors, we didn't know that we were wounded.
Right.
And if I'd have known better than to go into battle as a wounded warrior, we didn't, it took us a long time to realize that we really had the elders that we should be going to talk to. And of course, I think he might have been overstating it a little bit, because he did have some really good elders that were, advising them in the early days. But I think his point was that it is a give and take. It is a collaboration. It is, yes, we do know what the world as it is, and we know all the mistakes that we made, and yet at the same time, at least I speak for myself, I still want the world to be the way it should be too, okay? So thanks for whoever said that I forget who said it, but somebody said that in the young people's panel.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's our one of my fellow board members. I think we definitely can always use a lot more time to hear from everyone that would like to say something. Given the constraint of the time, I'm going to hand the mic, proverbial mic, back to our organizers. I saw Emily's hand up, and then Paul, our executive director. But before I leave this room, I want to thank you all, just to say what an extraordinary honor to be here, to be hearing your words, learning and learning all the same time, and receiving such a love letter. And at the same time, I also want to pay a very quick tribute to our dear sister Esmeralda Brown, who recently passed, a fellow board member, just shortly before COVID. And just know that we are in great company. I'm sure Esmeralda must be watching tonight and smiling and just saying, rock on, everyone. So here you go, Paul and Emily.
I guess I'm going to step in here. We know we've come up to a close. I'm a little bit lost for words, and Teresa, board president, wants to say something, but I'm crying through that video, and I've seen it probably a dozen times in the last 10 days. But Meg, what you said, remembering Connie, remembering Hubert, remembering Ingrid, remembering Esmeralda, we all know that we don't live forever.
Ingrid.
But the struggle is forever. Those of us that are holding this elder seat, so to speak, I'm a young elder, of course, I'm younger than Laura, so no. Those of us holding this down, I'm not done. None of us here on this panel are done. None of you young guys are done. I'm so thrilled and honored and excited that you guys are in the game. It makes my day, it makes my week, it makes my life, it makes me run. So, you know, one of the things that we're saying in this 40th anniversary, and we're using generic language at this stage, but we're launching out of this 40th anniversary, a youth funding board, and we're not giving it a name because that board is going to figure out its name. But we're working on that to participate in this grant cycle coming up starting in January. There'll be a parallel board to our board of directors makes our grants, facilitated by staff. Staff will facilitate this younger board, and they'll make grants in the course of the spring as well. And that we envision that as a permanent project. So that's not going away, and it's part of the transition in who we are. You know, some of us have been doing this a long time. We can't do it forever. In some ways, we'd like to. So that's happening, and you know, mild pitch here for those of you remaining on the call. We'll be looking for raising some money. We've got about half. We're going to move $40,000 through that cycle this spring. As the first year through, we've got about half of it in the bank, so to speak, in pledges and commitments from the board. And we are going to keep that door open for the cash and the support. And we look forward to convening that group. And we look forward to you all, you know, hearing how it goes and what we're able to do from that perspective. We believe this generational work is critical. And I can't say enough thank yous to everybody standing on Meg's and Andrea's shoulders, and Ray and all of us. I'm just following in footsteps here.
Jenny.
And I really, really appreciate that you all took the time this evening. I want to give Teresa the last word, but I will say that, you know, we're not supposed to say this in the organizing world technically, but in reality, the Creator's with us. This is our work. The Creator's with us all the time. We're doing this because we've been appointed to do this. We've been selected to do this, and we've chosen to do this. And you all young people jumping in here, I love you. You make me cry. I'm so honored to be on the screen with you. So before I break down, I'm going to say thank you, and I'm going to bounce it to Teresa.
Oh, Teresa, you're on mute, my friend. Let's see.
Okay.
There we go.
I said, thank you, Yamar. I want to thank you so much. That was an incredible film. And I want to thank all the young people that are on the panel tonight. As Paul said, we are launching a youth group that will be participating and making those grants so that we have the voice of our young people. It is very important as we move in this movement that we learn to share the seat that we sit on, and that we understand that the struggle is forever. It's not today, it's not going to go away today or tomorrow, it is forever. So as we look towards the future, which you are the future and the future generation, because there's not a lot of young people that will dedicate themselves to this kind of work. There is a lot of people that will, and a lot of people that won't. But I want to thank you for standing up and being there. You make us feel young again. I want to, you know, I always say, you know, it's not how old you are, you know, because we all get there. But the most important thing is how we stay in communications with each other and draw closer to those movements that we need to be in. And I want to say to everybody that has been part of PDF that we uphold the values that were set the foundation for PDF to move forward in this funding world. So I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Thank you so much. Venceremos, and we move forward. Thank you.
Venceremos.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Love you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
There's a lot of people we could shout out that are in this list. We had to limit that, but Jenny,
Thank you all.
Lad, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Meg.
Thank you, PDF.
Andrea.
Thank you.
Thank you, PDF.
Thank you.
Thank you to the staff. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you, PDF.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Ali.
Hello.
Hi, Jenny. It's also a very unusual board. Let me say, we are like family. We are family.
We are family.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you,
people.
Thank you, Trish.
Thanks.
Thank you, Trish.
everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Trisha.
Jamie.
Yeah.
And thanks to the staff of PDF.
Emily, Brennan, you're, and Paul, you're the two rock stars.
Was having some serious technical difficulties in the minute of that, so I was freaking out a little bit, but we got through it.
Nice to
Yes,
see
I
you,
want to
Jane.
thank, I really want to thank the staff of PDF. When Paul called me and told me what was going on, you got right in there and moved the process. And I want to thank you so much for making it possible for us to be able to have this tonight.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks
That's
a
what
lot,
we call
Teresa.
teamwork, teamwork.
Yeah.
It is a very tiny and mighty team, that's for sure. Good night. We see each other in November.
Soon, yep. Thank you, Trisha. Thank you. Thank you, Brendan,
Thanks.
Emily,
Ali.
Ali.
Hey, boss.
Eva. Eva.
I call you tomorrow or Saturday.
Okay, bud.
All right, boss.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
How do we leave? Oh, thank you, boss.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Ali. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.